Hey, Hammer fans, I know many of you have been noticing the great year that Hammer Films has had in terms of releasing physical media in 2025, and that culminated with The Curse of Frankenstein released on 4K in November. Now, today we're going to talk about this film, and if you're a casual fan of horror, you may not know the importance of this film, but of course, if you are a Hammer diehard, you understand what this film means to the horror genre. Recently, I had a chance to talk with two people from Hammer Films, Steve Rogers and Mark Stanborough, and we sat down along with George Feltenstein of the Warner Archive to talk about the film, The Curse of Frankenstein, and its legacy and why it's so important and why it has endured over the years. So here's our conversation. I think you'll really enjoy it. Lots of little surprises and little nuggets from people who work at Hammer Films and Warner Brothers. Before we dive into the nuts and bolts of this, I did want to, for the fans here, talk a little bit about Curse of Frankenstein, released 1956, and just the film itself, what it meant for Hammer and the relationship with Warner Brothers and the industry overall.
Well, Curse of Frankenstein was a game changer. I know it's an overused term, but it's true. I think I'm right in saying before Curse of Frankenstein, the horror film it had sort of gone juvenile. The whole Universal Monsters thing of the 30s, where in the UK at least, you'd have Bela Lugosi censored, etc. Horrible thing. Had gone to, was it Abbott and Costello meet the Wolfman or something like that? That is generally acknowledged to be sort of like the low point. That is where a horror film had got to.
Right.
And probably that's where it would have stayed, because in the 50s, horror was not a dominant genre. In the US, there was, and in the UK by default, because it would have picked up the films, there was film noir, there was westerns, and sci-fi was on the rise. It was a bit juvenile, but it was sort of moving towards Thing from Another World, etc., etc. And along came Hammer. And in 1955, they did a film called The Quatermass Experiment, which was based on a BBC series from a couple of years before. And the reason that was a game changer for Hammer, in its small way, wasn't as big as Curse of Frankenstein, was because it treated science fiction and horror themes in an adult way. And it was a runaway success in the UK. No one could really understand why. And when they asked the exhibitors, the cinema owners, why these cinemas were packing out, they were told categorically, it's the horror. So, of course, Hammer, being no slouch at thinking, wow, this is brilliant, the way to print money here, they tried to fast track a second Quatermass, and then they realized they needed to do something else. Offered to them, according to law and history, it's their silent partner, Elliot Hyman, who was Seven Arts at the time. He was approached with a Frankenstein script. He didn't know what to do with it, but he knew some people who would. So that got passed on to Hammer. Hammer looked at it, said, "This is no good. We can do a better one of this ourselves." I mean, I'm speeding things up for brevity. Right. A bit more to it than that. But it ended up with them saying, right, we'll do our own Frankenstein film. They had to be very, very careful, because Universal lawyers were poised in the wings, waiting for, the first sign of a square-headed makeup or neck bolt or whatever. So they had to be the same but different. And then at a certain point, because all of the paperwork says, oh yeah, this is going to be a black and white cheapie, it'll get knocked out in 4 weeks, and another B movie.
Right.
At some point, they decided, and I don't know why, but it was a genius move, that they would do it in colour. And I believe I'm right in saying that it was the first colour horror film. And it was a combination of the colour and the shock of seeing blood, I suppose, in colour, and the fact that they employed actors who took their roles very, very seriously, regardless of, Frankenstein is not kitchen sink drama. You're not going to get that on TV. So it's a fantastical and ridiculous in some ways plot, but nevertheless these people took it very, very seriously. And it was the combination of Pete Cushing and Christopher Lee, their conviction in their roles, and the novelty of blood in colour, I suppose, that got that's why it was a game changer. All of a sudden, it was, wow, this is horror. Is it horror? Is it drama? Damn, these actors are good. You've seen the posters of the day. They are quite lurid. They are bait to get teenagers into the cinemas. And so it was the poster and the trailer and everything and the monster makeup that got people in there. But when they were in the cinema, it was the performances and it was the direction and the camera work that just grabbed them. It was a sort of a confluence of several things, but it was the confluence that got it. And that made a lot of money for a lot of people worldwide.
Won't you understand you're in real danger? What Victor is doing is dangerous to everyone in the house.
Then what are you trying to tell me, Paul? That Victor's wicked? Insane?
This can never end in anything but evil.
It's what I've done that counts. I've created a being.
Stop what you're doing before it's too late. Don't be afraid.
I'd kill you.
You see you've created a monster.
That doesn't matter. I'm creating a being that will live and breathe. I'll give you life again.
Yeah, and it was a hit right off, right? It was in the UK, and then George Warner Brothers was a part of that.
So the studio was very much behind it. And yes, and the film actually opened at the Warner Theatre in Leicester Square in London because we still had ownership of movie theaters internationally in the 50s. I think your recent re-premiere of the restoration was in the same theater that has a new name. Am I right?
It was absolutely correct.
That's so cool.
But how did Warner Brothers get involved in this to begin with?
It was a distribution acquisition, which the studio really wasn't doing very much of. But, you know, all indications are from what I can garner in the files that people were very excited to embrace this. And the timing couldn't have been better because I don't know if this was happening in the UK at that time, but at that time in the US, the classic Universal horror films had all begun airing on television, and they were beloved by new audiences, but they also were obviously older films. So this new approach was embraced really around the world. And I just am so grateful that we've been able to come together so that we can bring this new restoration that these gentlemen have toiled on so incredibly definitively for audiences to use in their 4K players or their Blu-ray players, whatever their format is. I think what you folks have done that we're so happy to have collaborated with you on is a definitive presentation of, I think this is kind of the great gem of what began, 15 years, even more maybe, of consistent horror films?
Absolutely. This was the one that started Hammer on the road. I mean, before that, they were known in the US, but the deals that they made, the co-production deals, were very much done with not majors, shall we say. People like Robert Lippert, etc., who's a bit of a fly-by-night American producer. But what those deals did, however low rent they could be, is that they did give Hammer, as a company, a foothold in America from the early 50s. which no other British film company did. So by playing this game and basically creating a run of transatlantic crime thrillers, it did actually position them, although they didn't know it at the time, for these later deals going on over, like George said, 15 years. I mean, if you look at the companies that Hammer made co-productions with from Curse of Frankenstein onwards, it's pretty much everyone. So you're looking Warner's, Universal, Paramount, Columbia,
20th Century Fox, and United Artists. Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And Peter Cushing becomes not just a star in the UK, which he was from the television, right? But now he becomes a huge international star.
As he deserved to be.
Yeah.
And yet he never got an award. He got TV awards for the work he did in the 50s. But if you watch his performance in Curse of Frankenstein now, it is... I was asked a couple of weeks ago, what is the thing that surprised you most about Curse of Frankenstein? And Mark's the same as me. We've seen this film so many times over the last year. But not from a viewing perspective. So we're looking at clips, we're looking for errors, we're looking for whatever. And actually sitting there and watching it, you just think, that's an amazing performance. And if it was, I'm pretty certain, if it wasn't a horror film, he would have been up for all of the awards going, BAFTAs, Oscars, whatever. But because it was still, it's a horror film. But the performance is superb, really is superb. And even Christopher Lee, who had complained he had no dialogue, and I think it's about 40 minutes in before you actually get to see him. The performance of the creature, there's so much thought behind that. He's not a big lumbering guy wandering around with his arms out. This is somebody who's put absolute thought into every move he makes. Does the arm work properly? How if I was made of bits, how would my body coordinate? The answer is it wouldn't. And so he does this ungainly, uncoordinated thing. Superb performances.
Yeah, and I think the whole kind of concern or restrictions of, hey, Universal, we can't touch and we need to be different. That's really the power behind the differences in the script and the performances and it really makes it its own. And those restrictions, I think, really helped make sure that happened.
I think you've nailed it there. I mean, it's the creativity of restrictions, isn't it?
Yes.
Somebody tells you can't do something, you find another better, hopefully, way of doing it. And it is a most surprising film. It's been back in the cinemas in the UK. I think we've done 150 screens or something like that. And it got, what was it, Mark? The Guardian newspaper gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. I think the Times give it 4 out of 5 or something like that. And this is a what is it, 70-year-old film? Not bad going. It took 70 years. It's got its due now. Yeah. But this started the trend. Then I mean, obviously they did Dracula after that, and The Mummy, and everything rolled on from that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with George Feltenstein of the Warner Archive, who is a regular here on The Extras, and of course, Steve Rogers and Mark Stanborough of Hammer Films. It's always great to hear about the legacy of The Curse of Frankenstein and to revisit that film. It's such a fantastic film. Lots of stuff I didn't really know about, details from the original release back in '56. And then, of course, it was fun to hear about this kind of the recent release and what it meant, and some of the reviews and stuff that they got. So fantastic. And if you're interested in picking up the new 4K, I have links in the notes here on our YouTube channel. And we're going to be posting a couple others. I think we maybe already have one video up about the resurgence there at Hammer and how 2025 has just been a banner year as they've started really releasing top quality 4Ks from their catalog. And then we'll have another one for those of you who want to hear more about this 4K release, the restoration, the extras, and really deep dive into that. So look for that. If you're subscribed, you should be alerted when that becomes available. If you haven't yet subscribed, you might want to do that. We always appreciate everybody's support. So thanks for watching. Until next time, stay slightly obsessed about horror.